Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on today's call. I'm lucky. This is such a cool opportunity for me. So I'm grateful that Amanda Loudin is joining me. We met through a podcast that we did together, and she is a reporter with the New York Times, one of her many places that she contributes to. But she had asked me to help contribute to an article, and in our conversation, she mentioned the struggles that she goes through with having to, the steps that it takes to publish an article with the New York Times. Is that your husband?
No,
Can you at least wave?
Matt, you just went on the video. Sorry about
You can
that.
wave, it's fine. I usually have my dog. Hi. Thanks for joining us. I usually have my dog pop up right here, so I'll take husband. So that's good too.
Okay.
So, Amanda had mentioned something about the era of old media versus social media, and I don't really want this conversation to be a debate about that, but that about the steps that she has to go through as a New York Times reporter to get a story out there compared to what some people do on social media, where they just like pop up a camera light and say whatever they want to say with authority, and that makes them an expert. So I asked her, would you do a conversation with me to help people understand what it's like to be a journalist, especially a healthcare journalist in these days? And she agreed. So thanks, Amanda, for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And this is one of my soapbox issues. So yeah, this is great.
All right, great. Well, Amanda is an award-winning freelance journalist whose work has appeared in publications including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, ESPN, and Money Magazine. What I especially connected with learning about her story is that, like many runners, she didn't originally imagine herself becoming either a runner or a writer, but yet both became central parts of her life, and she uses her knowledge of both to write, which I love. She's completed 15 marathons. She's an Ironman triathlete, along a bunch of other races it sounds like she's done. And she talks about how running and writing naturally go together. I really love that idea because I think sometimes the best thinking even I do, the curiosity I feel sometimes in storytelling happens when we're moving through nature. So I like that you use that as to push you through the miles.
Yeah.
Amanda's reporting spans everything from health and science to finance, urban development, and culture. But at the center of it all, it's a passion for asking thoughtful questions, following stories deeply, and delivering quality journalism in a world that really needs it. So I'm so grateful. I'm excited for this. So thank you. To start it off, what made you want to become a writer, and how did that different than maybe a journey to be a journalist and reporter versus just being a writer?
So I am actually an accidental journalist. I was always a news junkie growing up. Read the papers even when I was young. I had a mom who was an English teacher, so she taught me well how to write over the years. But I actually went to college to study international relations. When I got out, I was kind of like, wow, what am I going to do with this degree? And I saw an ad for a local trade magazine that was looking for an editorial assistant. So I literally went into the office with a college paper, knocked on their door, and talked my way into the job. And so I am a learn on the job journalist. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and at one point when you and I were talking about all things plantar fasciitis, you had said, you had asked me a question and then you backtracked and said, wait, I need to ask you a better question. And that was interesting to me because I wondered if that was something you learned early in your career, about that reporting was really about asking better questions more so than it was about having opinions that you were just trying to get support for.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true because all journalists, I think we all have to work hard not to bring in our biases. And we have to think about the reader that we're writing for, the audience that we're writing for, and think about the information they want. So yes, that definitely early on, I kind of picked up on that. And I had so many great mentors that taught me these things along the way. So yes, it's definitely a skill that you have to pick up and hone. Yeah.
Was it your running background that kind of led you more into the healthcare side of things, or was there something else? Was it like the only position that was open, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, so my very first job was actually for medical trades. So I kind of got my, immersion in that right out of the bat. And then I didn't really come to running until a few years later, running in endurance sports. And then I actually started a running blog so that I could, back in the days when blogs were really big, I wanted to kind of use that actually to show editors like my depth of knowledge in the running space. I was also a running coach too. So all those things, and kind of combined it all and parlayed that into this career that I have now.
What Ironman did you do?
I did the very first Ironman Lake Placid, so 1999. Yeah.
You're part of the OG group for that one.
I am. Yes. And it's funny because that developed a real love of the Adirondacks for me. And I go back every single year. And every year we're on the roads, we're like where the bike race took place or where the lake where the swim took place. And I'll still get in the lake and swim. But I'll be like, oh my God, how did I do this? That was a whole nother life. It really was.
Yeah.
It really
well,
was.
It's serious time, effort, and support by your family
it is.
too.
So. It is. Yes.
What was your favorite marathon?
The Richmond Marathon. I ran it twice. I PR'd there twice. For me, it was just the perfect size, the perfect course, the perfect time of year. I just love everything about it. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Has the job of being a journalist become harder than it was when you first started out?
I think yes, in a couple of senses. One being there are fewer and fewer, as a freelancer, there are fewer and fewer outlets to write for, right? They're disappearing every week. We just heard last week Self Magazine, announced it was no longer going to exist, right? So that happens every single week. And so that makes it more difficult. I have to work harder to find, the places to find clients, I guess, to the places to write for. And then, yeah, just the loss of faith in journalism, I think, in the reading public, makes it hard. People, there's been a concerted effort to disqualify what journalists do. And I'll add one more element. I think the cable news 24/7 cycle has been damaging to journalism too. Yeah.
What do you think a young journalist, somebody going into this, misunderstands about all of that then?
That's hard. It's hard for me to know what their perceptions are, but I see a lot of bright signs from, like student newspapers and journalism students in general. Just they do seem to still have a real dedication to the craft and want to be a part of it. And I put a lot of hope in them and what they can accomplish in the future. And so I think maybe in some ways they might inherently understand the landscape better, because they are digital natives and they've grown up as social media natives, and they understand all the pieces and parts and where journalism fits into that.
Do you think AI, I had read an article that in the beginning, they were worried that AI would take over for journalists.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're more fearful that AI is going to take over for copyright editors. Are you sensing that as well?
Yeah, I have yet to really worry about AI. I think that most editors and publications really care about the content that they're getting, and they don't want AI. I've seen calls for pitches and they're like, do not even try it, we will pick it up. But I will say I also have a couple of editors who I work with who were duped by AI pitches, assigned something to a journalist. When the journalist turned it in and they went back for revisions, the revisions kind of were able to suss it out and reveal that this was AI written. But the landscape's only gonna get harder in that regard, I guess. And I feel more for the editors than I do for the journalists. I don't have a fear that AI is going to replace journalists. I don't.
Okay, that's great. Even in the physical therapy world, we have AI companies that assign patients, go right to the AI first now. And then if they fail, if they see AI through their app on their phone, they see, I have shoulder pain, the AI gives them exercises. that doesn't work because a lot of the times the problem isn't in the shoulder, it's somewhere else, like the opposite side hip, and AI doesn't know that. And then the patient goes to the doctor and says, well, PT didn't work for me. And it's like, well, the app PT didn't work for you, but a PT worked for you. So I think all of us are feeling it in different ways, but are learning to navigate around it. So I'm guessing that's similar to you.
I think so. I think that's absolutely accurate. And, it's all going to shake out somehow, some way, but I don't think the big looming AI is going to replace us all disaster is coming. Hopefully not. Yeah.
Okay, good. Do you find a hard balance between being accessible to readers while remaining scientifically accurate?
That can be hard, only because after years of doing this and after years of having my own level of understanding of the material that I'm writing about, I can kind of forget that, like, oh, this might be completely new to a reader. And that's where my editors come in and they'll be like, make this conversational, So it's good. That's really good to have them saying that and reminding me.
Do you think the public understands the difference between the reporting you're doing and personal opinion or commentary that they'll see on social media?
That's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. I mean, I have friends, really bright friends, and we'll be out on a run and they'll be quoting a particular podcaster, for instance, and I know this podcaster doesn't have the qualifications to be, he's way outside of his lane and, shouldn't be giving that information out. And so I think it's difficult, and I think there's a lot of research that shows people trust what they see their friends saying on Facebook versus what they read in a newspaper or magazine. So it's tough. And it is not a reflection of people's intelligence. It's a reflection of just the fire hose of information is out there, and how do they learn to disseminate between one or the other? Yeah.
We joke that, like, sometimes when my patients leave their phones in the room because they go to the bathroom, I want to, like, start saying phrases to influence their feed. Because you get on this kick, like, I want to wear, shoes with carbon plates, and the carbon plated shoe is not appropriate for them at all. But then all of a sudden their feed is filled with carbon plate stuff. And then they all of a sudden think, see, it's everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
The algorithm.
Same battle. Yeah.
How do you and I talked a little bit about this when we were on the phone one time about kind of that professionalism, the journalistic standards that you want to maintain. So can you walk me through you had asked me to contribute to an article about plantar fasciitis, which there's a ton of research to back what the shift from almost passive care to active loading strength training for plantar fasciitis. But can you walk me through what happens in a situation like that, where the New York Times had published an article a few years ago about treating plantar fasciitis one way, but now you're presenting a different way? What is that? How does that work with your editor and interviewing people? Can you talk us through that process of those steps?
Yeah. So honestly, that one is a really interesting one, because I think I first pitched the idea back in January. And as you know, we weren't even interviewing until probably early April, late March, I can't remember, and it just got published a couple of weeks ago. So that just, first of all, gives you an idea of the timeline that it can be. So, because I had to prove my case, I had to give them, the research that backs up, like recent research, from that. I think that article, the first article, was in 2023. So how do I make a case that 3 years later things have changed, or that they were not using the most up-to-date information without stepping on that other journalist's toes also, right? So it's really, I've got to sell the case with the research first and foremost, and share some of the information I'm getting from sources like you, and say, well, this is what these actual practitioners are doing right now. So yeah. And then as far as the public went, I mean, we talked a little bit about the comments. I mean, I think people were, it is an insidious condition that is pervasive, and people really want that information. And so people were like, wow, this is great. We talked about this too. I wish there was more video in it so I could learn from it. So I think it was definitely something that resonated with the readers, and there was a good need for it. and yeah, it was a big, I had to put on my sales hat for that one. Yeah.
And are your editors, I feel like those editors must be balancing so many things at once, all the articles that are in the works or about to be published. But the relationship you have to have with your editor, there has to be a level of trust that took you some years to cultivate, and then say,
For
there's
sure.
something here, and then have them not push back on everything you're saying.
For sure, for sure. And I think, this one editor, he and I have been working together for years. And so we do definitely have a level of trust. But he will also, he has to answer to other editors. And so, they have their discussions and he comes back to me like, well, okay, but we need to see something new and surprising. And, so it's a give and take without a doubt at the end of the day. But we definitely, we have this nice working relationship and it works for us all. Yeah.
On the backside of it, so we always track which blogs of ours do really well, which ones stay active over a few years, and that helps us keep creating content that's relevant to and we're running based for our running academy side. But is that tracked? Are those metrics tracked, like how well an article did, and then you're onto something?
Yeah, for sure. My editor will shoot me a text and say like, this thing's going gangbusters, well done, and then I can notice, or he even, one time was like, look, you're on the front page, because they will, on the digital side, they will move things around. If it's playing well, it's going to go up higher in the feed, where people are going to spot it first when they go on the landing page or whatever it might be. So, I had one a couple of years ago that I remember it was about the idea of training to keep power in your muscles, and people loved that one. And I knew I was doing well because like there was a Trump headline and then there was my article right next to it. I'm like, oh, look at this. So yeah.
Do you look at what trends are happening on social media, and you ever use that as a guide for maybe there's some things I should investigate on this?
So super interesting on that. I actually, for my own personal reasons, left social media about a year ago. I used to, back when Twitter was Twitter, before it became X, I was super engaged in Twitter, and it did serve me up a lot of story ideas. And I was engaged a bit in Instagram, and it would serve me up, I'd be like, oh, look what these runners are talking about, or look what they're doing. And yes, it absolutely served as a great source for storylines, for sources, and what have you. When Twitter switched over to X, I left. And that took away my absolute biggest platform that I used. I couldn't really find another one that I felt was comparable. Nothing else has really come up to fill in that space. And then I don't know, I just a few years ago was just really reflective on my age and stage of life, and like, do I want to spend it looking at scrolling social media? And I decided I don't. I pulled the plug on everything. It's been a year and a half. I haven't missed it on a personal level, but I do miss it professionally, because yes, it was a great place to find storylines and sources. And I do find, I struggle a little bit more with story ideation without that helping me. Yeah.
Okay. I personally have left Facebook and Instagram as much as I can, but because of my business, I can't. But I can see the power in that, just that freeing feeling. But at the same time, you have to remain relevant in this space. So I can see that struggle. Do you think that there's something traditional journalists could learn from independent creators or social media voices that are out there? Or do you feel like if a story is going to be there, you're going to find it?
I mean, I think a little bit of both. I think, I personally, like for storylines, I get a lot of, I subscribe to a lot of newsletters that feed me emerging research, and I, most weeks I find the time to scroll down through that and go, oh, this looks interesting, or that looks interesting. And I'll maybe, chase that a little bit as a seed for a story. But as far as like what we can learn from people on social media and influencers and things like that, I think one thing they're really good at that maybe journalists aren't as good at is just, speaking directly to the audience. I mean, I have the reader in mind, but I'm also like just thinking about like, oh, I need to disseminate this information or that information. And I think there's maybe a layer that's removed between a content creator, a social media influencer and their audience, and a traditional journalism and the audience, because there's all the editing and fact checking and all that kind of stuff, which is great and important. But they also are just like, here was my experience today. And the reader can be like, yeah, that's really relatable. That's my experience too. And it engages them maybe quickly and more so than the way I deliver information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I know there are some social media influencers that do research and
Yeah.
they, read articles like yours because you vetted it for them. You almost make their job easier, but it
Right.
does then create that continuum of like, or at least good reporting is being showcased and helping runners with plantar fasciitis or whatever it is out there, because now these social media influencers are using your hard work to at least talk about something that is been vetted.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. So it's symbiotic.
If you could change one way that the public engages with news, what would you change?
Um, I think something that's really important. Um, it's important to be balanced. I mean, in what you're reading. We all, part of our, problem in our nation right now and our divisiveness is that the algorithms keep us very siloed into, just reinforcing our biases. And I think one thing it's been an epiphany for me, even as a reporter, since I've been off social media. I had this epiphany, maybe 6, 8 months ago, where I recognized I'm tuning into a few different voices that I would never have tuned into before. And so I think it's important to, again, we all have our beliefs, our biases, and we want to stick with that comfort zone, right? We just want that reinforcement. It makes us feel like we're on the right path, right? But I think it's important to be wider in your lens in the content that you're consuming and check in every once in a while with the other side, if you will, or the other medium, whether it be a podcast or Instagram or a newspaper, if you're only sticking to social media, be well-rounded in the content you consume.
I think that's great advice, especially as my daughter is headed off to college. I've
Mm-hmm.
said that somebody else might be right. You have to give them the
Yes.
opportunity and you have to listen to them. So I think that's
Yes.
really a great way to say it is keep it open, consume everything you can. It doesn't just have to be one
Yes.
side of it.
Yes. Yes.
Great
Absolutely.
advice. What do you think reporting's taught you about people?
Um, I think that there are just so many interesting stories. I mean, everyone has a compelling story. That's what reporting has taught me. I mean, like I just did a series on, speaking of college, a series for one of my college university publications on these seniors who are getting ready to graduate and go off into their career. And I'm like, these kids and their stories and their paths to get to where they are and choose these careers and where they're headed. And it's fascinating, and I think that's the biggest thing is like everyone has something interesting to share. Yeah.
What makes you trust them? If you're interviewing somebody, what raises somebody's level of trust in your eyes?
I mean, okay, so a lot of my pieces come assigned, and so I'm just maybe putting a little trust in the editors for picking the right sources in that regard. But I definitely vet my sources before I go to them, and um, look over their bios and whatever, if it's a researcher, look through what they've written and that kind of thing. And yeah, I guess I've just been at it so long that I can recognize a credible source from an incredible one. I work with, and a lot of reporters do. There's a website called Quoted, which is a place I go for expert sources. And so what you're getting into there is a whole lot of PR agencies repping their clients, and you can sniff out the the bad ones pretty quickly. You just go look at their bio and you look at, what is their end goal with this, with being a source and things like that. And it's pretty easy to be like, yeah, they're, I don't know. They want it for the I don't know, for the audience gains, for their own, so they want to sell a product or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're unquoted, so I get quoted requests all the time. And
Sure.
I have noticed that when I submit a pitch now, I'll get a response like, we need to see verification of your license. We want a different headshot in these measurements so we know you're not AI.
Yes.
And that's been really
Yes.
interesting. So we're always like, all right, we'll send you whatever you need. But that's been very interesting that at least they're trying to vet out who's a true expert and who isn't.
Yes. And there's a lot of the agencies who just want to submit written. They'll be like, oh, here's what he has to say on this topic. And I'm like, no. We're going to have face-to-face or phone-to-phone or whatever it might be interviewing. We're not going to work it this way. Yeah.
Yeah. I had pitched a reporter wanted some information on running in super cushioned shoes. I think is okay once in a while, but I like the variety to keep the feet strong.
Yeah.
So I submitted like a counter to that, and she wrote back like kind of a nasty message, like, that's not what I asked. I wanted information on this, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I wanted you to present both sides.
Right.
But I learned my lesson. Only submit for what they're asking.
Yeah, but I think your level of expertise is I think what you probably pushed back on was probably valuable. So yeah.
Well, maybe just with that reporter, I don't say anything. So,
right.
I just have a couple questions left. If you could interview anybody alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh man.
I did not tell you about this question, but I just
You didn't. Oh goodness, that is really, really, really hard. I mean, I'm going to go with running here, and I'm going to go with a female runner, and I'm going to say I have yet to be able to interview Mary Kane, and I know another mother runner. They just got to do a podcast with her because she has a new memoir out. But she's one of the more fascinating people in the running space. I mean, she, along with Kara Goucher and others, I mean, really brought down the house of cards that was Nike, right? And it was important, and I think they truly meaningfully have created change for women in running. And so I think she'd be a really fascinating interview, but gosh, I mean, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm also a political junkie. So there are probably some politicians I would love to interview. And some of them being from like, other sides of the aisle than where my views are, because I want to understand like, how, why, those types of things. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. That's good.
Right.
All right. What's next on your racing calendar?
Well, so on my racing calendar, so I have a very full spring. I'm doing in like 2 weeks, May 23rd, it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm actually hiking the entirety of the Maryland section of the AT in one day. So it's 41 miles from Pennsylvania down to West Virginia.
Did you say in one day?
In one day.
Okay.
And I've never done anything that long in terms of mileage on my feet, but I have done days of hiking, climbing mountains that have been equivalent to time on feet. So I'm not that worried about it, but it's big also. And then 3 weeks later, I have a gravel bike race in the Adirondacks. It's a 40-mile gravel bike race. I've done it the last 2 years. I want to do it a third year, but I've had all this travel also this spring, and I'm going away again next week. So suffice it to say, I've barely been on my gravel bike, and I have this race coming up. So I'm going to go into that super undertrained. And then a couple of days after the gravel bike race, we will move over to the high peaks portion of the Adirondacks. And I'm also in pursuit of a goal of climbing all 46 of those mountains there. I'm 27 mountains in. So 2 days after the gravel bike race, we will go over and climb about 8 mountains in a couple of days to get that. So that's where I am for this spring. It's a little bit crazy, and then hopefully things will settle down a little bit. And, I'll look toward fall for a couple of other goals, probably some trail races, more mountains to tick off my mountains in the Adirondacks. And so it's a little bit ambitious, but exciting.
I love that you're pushing yourself like that, though.
Yeah, I'm just letting I'm older and have had a big career in endurance sports. And I think where I am now is curiosity. Like, what piques my curiosity? What do I want to go out and do? Is not necessarily for the, great performance. It's just more about accomplishment and seeing what I can do. Yeah.
Checking it off your bucket list. And
yeah. Are
you still strength training?
Absolutely. That is the piece that I won't let go. And honestly, with all these goals and with all of my travel, like the thing that freaks me out the most is missing, my regular strength training routine. I mean, so I'm trying to, even if I'm away, at least get in some body weight workouts. But I mean, it is what allows me to be durable at this age. And so I prioritize that really, really high. Yeah.
Well done. Who's your favorite racing buddy?
Oh,
or buddies?
Well, my favorite, my running friends that I've been running with forever. I mean, we have been literally all over the world racing over the years, and they'll be by my side for this 41-mile hike too. So we're just so solid and in tune with each other, and we will pass those 41 miles in great conversation. So yeah.
So you've got your tribe, you've got your strength training, you've got your career. I'm just really impressed. Thanks, Amanda. This has been great. I'm so impressed with, it was so fun to go through that process, doing that article with you, and just made me appreciate the news media that I think I had lost some trust in, but also had forgotten was there sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So easy to do that. And well, I really appreciated you as a resource because you are so knowledgeable and progressive in your thinking. And those are really valuable sources for us as journalists. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad we can help each other out. So
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So Amanda Loudin, thank you for your time today. Best of luck as your multiple events come up over the next few months.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Denise. All right. Bye-bye.